The landing at Provincetown Harbour in November 1620 was a pivotal moment in American history, marking the first steps of the Pilgrims in the New World. Their journey began out of necessity, driven by a search for religious freedom, a desire to preserve their English identity, and an aspiration to create better economic opportunities. After enduring exile in the Netherlands, the Pilgrims embarked on the Mayflower, their voyage ultimately taking them far from their intended destination. Despite facing countless hardships and unexpected challenges, their actions and decisions during this period laid the foundation for what would become one of the earliest successful English settlements in North America, the Plymouth Colony. Background and motivations: the Pilgrims, also known as the English separatists, sought religious freedom and the opportunity to practice their faith freely. After years of living in exile in the Netherlands, where they had fled to escape religious persecution in England, they faced challenges in adapting to Dutch society, particularly as they worried about losing their English identity. Consequently, they decided to establish a new settlement in America, which would allow them to maintain their traditions, worship freely, and pursue better economic opportunities. Originally, the Pilgrims had planned to settle near the mouth of the Hudson River, within the Virginia colony, as they believed it offered fertile land and economic potential. However, the harsh realities of the Atlantic crossing and a series of unfortunate circumstances led them off course, and they ended up landing far to the north, at Provincetown Harbour. The voyage and arrival on September 16, 1620, the Mayflower set sail from Plymouth, England, carrying 102 passengers and a crew of approximately 30 men. The journey across the Atlantic Ocean was grueling, lasting 66 days. Passengers were forced to endure cramped quarters, rough seas, unsanitary conditions, and limited provisions. The voyage was fraught with illness, and several passengers and crew members did not survive the journey. When the Mayflower finally reached the shores of the New World on November 11, 1620, Old-style calendar, November 21st in the New Style, the Pilgrims arrived at Provincetown Harbour, located at the tip of Cape Cod. This marked their first landfall, contrary to the popular myth that they first stepped foot at Plymouth Rock. The arrival at Provincetown was not planned. It was the result of a series of navigational errors and bad weather that forced the Pilgrims off course. Why Provincetown Harbour? The Pilgrims' original plan was to sail to the Virginia colony, but severe storms, rough seas, and dangerous shoals forced them to sail northward, beyond their intended destination. As they approached the American coast, they encountered strong winds and treacherous waters that made it impossible to continue south. These obstacles forced the Pilgrims to retreat and seek shelter in the more protected waters of Cape Cod Bay. Provincetown Harbour provided a safe anchorage, but it was not the ideal location for settlement. The Pilgrims had no choice but to make do with the available resources. The harbour offered a temporary respite from the storms, but the surrounding area was unsuitable for permanent settlement. The sandy soil, lack of fresh water, and exposure to harsh weather made it clear that the Pilgrims would need to continue their search for a more suitable place to establish their colony. First actions ashore. Before anyone went ashore, the Pilgrims realized the need for order and unity, especially since they were outside the jurisdiction of their original patent. On November 11, 1620, 41 adult male passengers signed the Mayflower Compact aboard the ship. This document was a fundamental step in establishing self-government in the New World. It committed the Pilgrims to work together for the common good of the colony, regardless of their individual differences, and served as the foundation for the democratic principles that would guide the governance of Plymouth Colony. Shortly after signing the compact, a group of armed men went ashore to collect firewood and scout the area. These first expeditions were critical for survival, as the Pilgrims needed to gather resources, find fresh water, and assess the land for potential settlement. In the days that followed, women and children also came ashore to do laundry, while small parties continued to explore the surrounding land. The Pilgrims were eager to find a location that would provide fresh water, fertile soil, and a defensible position for their settlement. Life and challenges at Provincetown. During their 5-week stay in Provincetown Harbour, the Pilgrims faced several significant challenges. Limited supplies. After months at sea, the Pilgrims' provisions were running low. They had to ration their food and supplies, which made survival difficult. Unfamiliar territory. The Pilgrims were in an unknown land. They had no knowledge of the area's geography, climate, or resources, and they needed to find a place that could support their growing settlement. Harsh weather. The late autumn weather was cold, wet, and unpredictable, making exploration and survival difficult. The Pilgrims had to endure the elements while trying to gather supplies and explore the area. No permanent settlement. Provincetown's sandy soil and lack of fresh water made it unsuitable for a permanent settlement. The Pilgrims knew they had to continue their search for a better location. Despite these challenges, the Pilgrims' time at Provincetown was not without its notable firsts. The Pilgrims had their first interactions with Native Americans, including the Nauset tribe. In their desperation for survival, the Pilgrims took food stores corn that had been buried by the Nauset and disturbed native graves. This action, which the Pilgrims later acknowledged as theft, was seen as a necessary step for survival at the time. Tensions escalated further, culminating in a skirmish at what is now known as First Encounter Beach in Eastham. Though arrows and bullets were exchanged, no one was injured. The decision to move to Plymouth after weeks of exploration and facing numerous challenges, the Pilgrims determined that Provincetown was not suitable for permanent settlement. The area lacked fertile land, fresh water, and proper shelter from the harsh weather conditions. A group of the most able-bodied men continued to explore the coast in search of a better location. Eventually, they found a site at what had once been a Wampanoag village, Patuxet, which offered several advantages. Plentiful fresh water, cleared fields for planting, a good harbor for anchoring ships, a defensible position on a hill. On December 16, 1620, the Mayflower sailed across Cape Cod Bay and anchored in Plymouth Harbour. The Pilgrims began building their town at this new site, where they would eventually establish the Plymouth colony. Summary table. Key events at Provincetown Harbour. Date event. Action November 11, 1620, Old Style. Mayflower anchors in Provincetown Harbour. November 11, 1620, Mayflower Compact signed aboard ship. November-December 1620, shore parties explore, gather wood, repair shallop and take native supplies. Early December 1620, skirmish with Native Americans at First Encounter Beach. December 16th to 18th, 1620, Mayflower sails to Plymouth. Significance. The landing at Provincetown Harbour marked a turning point in the Pilgrims' journey and American history. The Pilgrims faced numerous challenges, but their actions during their brief stay were significant in several ways. The signing of the Mayflower Compact set the stage for self-government and democracy in the New World, establishing the foundation for the governance of Plymouth Colony. The Pilgrims' interactions with the Native Americans, their exploration of the land, and their decision to move to Plymouth were all critical steps in their journey toward establishing one of the first successful English settlements in North America. Conclusion. In summary, the Pilgrims' arrival at Provincetown Harbour in November 1620 was a pivotal moment that laid the groundwork for the successful establishment of Plymouth Colony. While the Pilgrims faced numerous hardships, their determination to survive, their commitment to unity, and their willingness to adapt to their circumstances ensured that they would go on to create one of the earliest successful colonies in America. The Mayflower Compact and the Pilgrims' actions at Provincetown Harbour would have a lasting impact on the development of democratic principles in America and the future of the Plymouth colony. The journey of the Pilgrims from Provincetown to Plymouth is a testament to the resilience, courage, and adaptability that would come to define the spirit of early American settlers.